Okay, so I'm ready, Scott.
Okay, I am recording. Okay, so let's continue on, Phil. You've lumped another five together, I think. And I'm familiar with at least a few of these, I think. You go
Okay,
ahead and
yeah. So this is the mishmash pile. I'll start with the one I have the least to say about. Probably like the regular lovers. I really remember very little. It's a Bill Murray film from, I'm going to guess, 10 years ago, and called St. Vincent. It came kind of on the heels of his really celebrated period, which goes from Rushmore through to, I mean, Bill Murray's always been active. He's never
but I know
not.
what you mean. That yeah, the very critically acclaimed,
Yeah, Rushmore, Virgin Suicides,
Lost in Translation, not Virgin.
Lost in, sorry, that's what, yeah, you're right. Rushmore, Lost in Translation, Royal Tenenbaums,
Right.
few other films, Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
Yeah.
And that, and a film called About Schmidt. This, I think, links up with, a lot with About Schmidt, which is the guy that made Sideways, an election, and Alexander Payne.
Okay.
So, and in a way, the one thing I remember, or at least was reminded watching the clip that I'll talk about in a minute, uh, Bill Murray in this film, it's almost like his Lost in Translation character, maybe 15, 20 years down the road.
Mm.
He looks, the film itself might only be about 10 years later, but, makeup and everything, I think he's made to look about 20 years older than the character in Lost in Translation. Um, so, he plays this guy, he's sort of an old grump. A movie came out this year that made me think of St. Vincent right away, and it looked just horrible. It was with Tom Hanks. Did you see the trailer for
I
that
haven't
one?
seen a trailer for it. No.
Okay, I can't even remember what it was called, but in this, Tom Hanks played this really grumpy guy. You get the feeling he's and certainly got a racist streak in him, and just wants to be left alone. And an Indian family, I think, moves there. Pakistani family moves into his neighborhood, and of course, it's a heartwarming film or whatever. St. Vincent, that looked to be like St. Vincent, but I don't remember the heartwarming stuff so much in St. Vincent, although there probably is some of it. Um, but And I just discovered this almost by accident while writing the book. When I sat down to make a list of things I wanted to get in there, well, you and I were working on the blog. I didn't think about this, just something reminded me of it. Somebody played it or something. I stumbled over it and I said, oh, wow, I don't remember that. Maybe I was so bored by the film that maybe I just vacated. I wouldn't do that. I would have sat there and watched it, but it didn't stick out in my mind at the time. It's just great. It's and I think we've talked about Dylan in connection with Mad Men. And I don't know if we tried to figure out how often he's been used in films when we had that conversation, but I think this is probably the best use of Dylan I've ever seen in a feature film. It happens over the end credits of St. Vincent. Bill Murray pops out of his house, or I think he lives in a house, and he's got headphones on, so he's hearing what we're hearing. He's listening to Shelter from the Storm.
Yeah.
And he's not doing anything. He just wants to sit down. He's got his lawn chair out. He's got a beer. And, it's totally Bill Murray. And what he's doing, though, that makes one of the most interesting things about the scene, he's singing along, but he's singing in this really fractured way, which is how, sometimes we sing, right?
Yeah.
When you don't know the lyrics.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And Shelter from the Storm is a great song to sing along to. I mean, I always used to sing along Tangled Up in Blue,
Yeah. Yeah.
time where I knew every last word in that. Um, so it's like he's speaking in tongues or speaking broken English or something. And he's singing, he can be heard, and some lady that lives next door complains and kind of flashes a look up in her direction, but he keeps singing. And he's lounging, and the camera ends up taking an overhead view of him, and he takes out his hose, and he's doing a little work as he's lounging there.
Mm.
And it's such a great kind of middle-aged guy scene. And I thought this is I went and checked the director. It's not anybody I've heard of. I'm not even going to go back and look at his name again, Melfi or something like that. I thought it might have been Jim Jarmusch. It isn't. Jarmusch did make a film with Bill Murray called Broken Flowers. That was it.
Right.
This has also got a lot in common with Broken Flowers. Um, I'm thinking Bill Murray had a lot to do with this scene.
Mm.
Getting it into the film. You know, I we talked about how I often make the mistake of assuming that the music comes from the director. And this is one case where I'm thinking the music came from the actor.
Right.
I could be wrong, but Bill Murray comes out of Second City, and he's like the ultimate sort of early '70s, mid '70s guy.
Yeah.
Blood on the Tracks came out, and I'm thinking that this song means a lot to Bill Murray, and they said, okay, or whatever they were trying to envision this last scene. And do you have any ideas? Yeah. I'm going to be myself. This is what I do. I sing along. I put in headphones and sing along to Blood on the Tracks.
Mm.
Great scene.
Yeah. And really, there hasn't been a lot of use of Dylan in movies, and I wonder if it's the prohibitive
No.
cost. And you might have mentioned this once. I wonder. I thought you mentioned this in one of our chats that I wonder if now that Dylan's catalog has been sold, if we'll start hearing some of his stuff in more movies. I mean, obviously, it was in Mad Men, and there's been a few TV things, but I
I
can't
think
think
he
of that
will.
many movies where
No.
a Dylan song has just kind of come at you. I mean,
I think without doubt you're going to hear more because apparently that is how a lot of artists are, making up for the loss of revenue
yeah,
in terms of albums, CD sales, in terms of touring and all of that. That they're
God,
licensed.
what a field to mine for
Oh yeah. I
like
mean, I think
unbelievable, eh? Like,
you and I are going to love it. Some people will be appalled when all their sacred songs start turning up in,
yeah.
movies, and even worse for them, commercials and things like that.
I just have to
Um,
ask you quickly. This is a
yep.
bit off the path, but I
Sure.
assume you've seen. I will definitely see this movie at some time. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
I have. Yeah.
I know it's a different case because Dylan's in it, but do they use "Knocking on Heaven's Door"?
Oh, they definitely do, and they use
Okay.
it quite well, actually. It's yeah. I'm glad you brought it up. It's used to score. I think the death of Slim Pickens
Okay.
is in that film, and he dies, typical slow motion Peckinpah death.
Yeah.
And the song is definitely used.
Okay.
Dylan did the whole soundtrack, right?
Yeah.
So it's also that beautiful theme music that
Mm.
we talked about because it turns up in another film, which was really weird. We talked about it. Some other film that turns up where they
Yeah.
use like a Wes
Yeah.
Anderson, where they
Yeah.
use
Yeah. It was. Was it Tenenbaums or
it
something?
could have been
Yeah.
it could have actually been
Yeah.
Tannenbaum.
It's
Yeah.
like that weird kind of Mexican sort of
Yeah.
early
So,
70s. Yeah.
that is probably one of the best uses of Dylan in a movie, which seems it's totally different because he's in the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Past that, yeah, I'd be hard pressed to think of a lot.
Yeah.
I think of the Big Lebowski for some reason. I think that Jeff Bridges' character might play some Dylan in that film. I've been immersed in Dylan the last 2 weeks. I finally posted today this long entry I did on the Like a Rolling Stone video.
Oh, really?
That the video, right? The
Yeah. Yeah.
championship
Yeah.
one. Yeah, so I've been kind of immersed in that, but that's a music video. That's not a movie.
Mm.
Um, it's interesting. I should have made a list, but to my knowledge, this is my favorite Dylan, "Shelter from the
Yeah.
Storm" and St. Vincent. Remember nothing else about the film other than I really didn't like it at the time.
Yeah.
It was kind of a disappointment. It just seemed really kind of it was really stacked in one direction. That Bill Murray was going to growl and scowl at everything that happened around him.
Right. Okay.
Melissa McCarthy's in it too. The second film, now the other ones are films I like more. So the second film I wanted to talk about was go back to the list here. So we've got Malcolm X, Social Network, Our Nixon, McCabe, and Mrs. Miller. I'm going to skip to Our Nixon next. The other three films are more among my favorite.
Yeah,
Our Nixon, you've seen it, right, Scott?
yeah, yeah.
I think, is it directed by Penny Lane? I'm thinking.
I'll check if I've got it up on YouTube right now. I wanted
Yeah,
to
I think
say,
it's directed by a female British documentarian who's taken the name Penny Lane.
does it say
She
there?
also did,
I'll look it up while you're
okay.
talking about it, and then I can.
She also did one on a weird one about um, Satanists and the followers of Anton LaVey.
Okay, yes, you're right. It is Penny Lane. Yeah,
Penny Lane, yeah, and that one wasn't as interesting. Our Nixon, I really liked it. It's an interesting concept. All this home Super 8 footage, home movie
yeah,
footage, was discovered, shot by Haldeman, Ehrlichman, and the third guy was Dwight Chapin,
yeah.
who was Nixon's not his press secretary, is just kind of right hand guy. Uh, I guess chief of no, of
No,
course
it wasn't
Haldeman
chief
was
of
chief of
staff.
staff, but he had a title like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And this stuff was discovered 40 years later, I think, or maybe it was just released to the public 40 years later. And she took it and made a documentary of nothing but that home footage.
yeah.
No
Just like a
voiceovers.
collage. Yeah,
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 collage. No voiceover, nothing. And it was a really interesting way to look at Nixon because you were right up close. And the opening credits, the use of the song that we're going to talk about just knocked me out.
yeah.
I don't know that I've ever seen anything like it or was so caught off guard by a song. Because as I'm sure I must have mentioned in the movie, if you go to see a document, not mentioned in the movie, I always catch these when I view them, I catch stuff like that. I go, mentioned in movie, what movie?
Yeah,
A movie about us talking about our Nixon.
yeah,
As I mentioned probably mentioned in the blog post, if you go to see a documentary on Nixon, you assume that if there's music, it's going to be, we've talked about this stuff many times. It's going
yeah,
to be Janis Joplin, or it's going to be Jimi Hendrix, or it's going to
yeah.
be Clearwater, or it's going to be Jefferson Airplane,
Or shame, shame, shame would be
or Shame, Shame,
for
Shame.
the later
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
that's probably about the best you could hope for in the way
yeah,
of a surprise.
yeah.
Somebody remembers the Shame,
74. Yeah,
Shame cover.
yeah, exactly.
Or if you got really lucky, maybe they'd use smiling faces
Right,
sometimes.
right. Yeah,
But all of a sudden, it started the actual lead in. It's got Haldeman, and this is so weird. How did they ever get footage of this? It's Haldeman watching a Super 8 movie,
yeah, yeah. I
the
noticed that.
actual Bob Haldeman. So, did he set the camera up to shoot himself? Did he take the
Yeah, you could
equivalent?
just have a family member do it or something.
Yeah, a
You know?
selfie of him watching Super 8
Yeah,
footage. So, and then you've got the caption saying that, giving some background on how these films were discovered. And what starts up? Tracy Ullman's They Don't Know, which is so far away from the
yeah,
Nixon era and anything to do with Nixon. I mean, the only even remote connection is the Tracy Ullman video where Paul McCartney shows up in it. And it turns out to be such a perfect song on two levels, which is one, as just the most amazing counterpoint, catches you off guard. It's a million miles. Actually, let me say three levels. Two, because it's such a great song. It's one of
yeah.
my favorite songs from that era. And actually, it's going to be one song that turns up in both this book and the one I'm working on
That's
video.
good. Yeah,
I love the music video. But then it fits when you listen to the lyrics, it fits the movie and it fits Richard Nixon and the relationship he had with these people that
Hmm,
worked for him so well.
that's interesting. Yeah,
Because they don't know about us. They've never known about love. Do I have the lyric right?
yeah. I think that's right. Yeah,
And you get all this footage of him and the crowds and the adulation. It's like what? It's like Beatlemania.
yeah,
Um, People, and especially the people that worked for Nixon, they loved him. Like their devotion to him was almost not at Trump level. I don't think it. Yeah, it did. It did have the pathological sickness of Trump. I guess it wasn't quite so extreme in some ways. They weren't ready to. I don't think they were ready
wasn't
to,
cultish. It wasn't cultish.
or they weren't ready to necessarily, or at least so overtly overthrow an election. They were ready to
Yeah, yeah,
overthrow an election, working in the background. I mean, we're trying to differentiate between one type of criminality and another,
Yeah,
but
no, but there's still a recognition of
there is something.
there's a
Yeah,
recognition that a system does exist and you can try and subvert it, but yeah,
yeah,
there's a line that didn't get crossed, I would say. I think
there's
that's
some
fair to say.
difference there. But they absolutely loved them, and I thought, wow, this song gets at that somehow, you know. And it plays for a good minute and a half, 2 minutes. I noticed they did edit it. It skips out a middle part when I watched it
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah.
But boy, what a great choice by Penny
Oh
Lane.
yeah,
Like
very
really,
inspired. Yeah,
yeah, just someone who's really thinking, what song am I going to use here? I don't want to go that other route. Um,
yeah.
what can I do? Uh,
Ingenious. Yeah.
and I want to call her up and say, look, your hard thinking and your hard work wasn't lost completely. Like, I don't know if anybody ever complimented
Yeah,
her.
yeah. Like it's just one of those things that
I want to just say that was brilliant.
yeah,
You
you
did
sent the link for the
brilliant.
whole video and there's not a comment. I mean, there's only one comment in total. Now it's about the whole, it's a link for the whole,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
it's one of those things that probably, your book is maybe the only place that would preserve any talk about that song, probably, really.
Probably, yeah. Probably. I've never seen it mentioned
Just think of
elsewhere.
who would mostly be the audience for that movie
I
too.
should have checked. Yeah, most of the audience probably are people that love Nixon, or at least, felt he got a bad
Or
deal.
just of a certain age and they may not think of movies and music in the same
Yeah,
way
yep.
too. So yeah, weird, eh?
I should have checked a couple of reviews because it was reviewed, and just see if anybody bothered to mention
Yeah,
Tracy.
that'd be interesting to see. Yeah.
And I didn't rewatch the film. I don't remember if there's any other music in it. There is the famous scene with the first time I think I'd seen it with the Lennon sisters, where I don't know if you remember it, where he had the Lennon sisters. Not Was it the Lennon sisters or Lennon family? Or no, it wasn't. What am I talking about? It's a Ray Conniff Singers, and he
Oh,
had
okay.
picked them to perform at one of his events,
I don't
and
remember that at
he
all.
made a couple of jokes about his musical taste, saying I'm such a square, I still go for Ray Conniff Singers. And then one of the singers steps out and says, Mr. President, when are you going to bring this war to an end? It
Oh,
was
really? I
shocking.
don't remember that at all.
Oh, you can watch just that isolated clip on YouTube. So
Wow.
look at that. It's a genuinely shocking moment.
Yeah, that's
Um,
great.
and they didn't pull this person off stage. I think it was a woman. She just went back and sang with them after that. It
Wow.
was like, okay, let's hope nobody really notices what just happened.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so good film and amazing use of music. Now, the next one I wanted to get to was, and now let's move into three films I love. Do them in any order. Let's start with the three films are The Social Network, Malcolm X, and McCabe and Mrs. Miller. So let's start with Social Network. Okay. We talked a lot about, talked some in other contexts, the Beatles turned up, and we talked about, goes along with Dylan, how few memorable examples there really are of Beatles music and movies,
Yeah,
outside of obviously Help and Hard Day's Night,
yeah, yeah,
and Mad Men again,
yeah,
because you
yeah.
just the incredible Tomorrow Never Knows scene. And like Dylan, we put it down to probably licensing. Cost Mad Men some outrageous sum of money to use that song,
Yeah.
$1 million, something like that. And yet David Fincher did either he paid up or as time went on, Paul McCartney, who I think owns all the rights, he became maybe a little more lenient. David Fincher used the Beatles at the end of The Social Network, and he used them in a way that was so perfect because the end of The Social Network, I think, is just such a brilliant commentary on the world we live in, and it's a final scene that would have made no sense, you know, 15 years before the film was made.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess maybe 15 years before you could have come up with an equivalent, but um, certainly it's very specific to Facebook, very specific to the world we live in, Mark Zuckerberg. And what happens is his the trial court case negotiations, not a court case, it's some negotiations around a table, two different people, groups of people are bringing lawsuits against him. One is his original partner, Eduardo, I forget his last name, who he basically froze out of Facebook, and he's being sued for, millions and millions of dollars by him, and he's being sued by the Winklevoss twins, who were the twins that came up with the original idea for Facebook, sort of in rough draft.
Right.
Hired Zuckerberg to carry it out. Then Zuckerberg went off and created Facebook. So you get two different sets of lawyers and negotiations going on, all of it intercut with the actual events as they happen. So by the time we get to the last scene, we're at the end of one of the negotiations. And he's out talking to, she's become a fairly well-known actress. I can't think of her name, Rashid or something like that. She's the daughter, I believe, of somebody
Not
famous.
Alicia Rashid or something.
Yeah, and I think her mother is Felicia Rashid, or the sportscaster and the actress, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
I never do my homework. And she's talking to Zuckerberg. She almost seems to, there's some attraction there. And she's saying something like, people don't understand you. And she delivers a famous line, something like, you're not really an asshole. You just work hard at trying to be one. And then meanwhile, he's sitting with, much like I am right now, he's got his laptop out in front of him, and the film comes full circle. Facebook is now past, I think, its first million users or 5 million users or something. And he looks up his old girlfriend, who is in the first scene of the film. They have an argument. They're both at Harvard, and they break up because he's just really so mean and nasty and self-centered towards her. And she, calls him out for how awful he's being. And then the film goes on, tells his story. We never hear from her. Oh, actually, he runs into her in one scene during the course of the film. But now he's making a friend request on Facebook to be her friend.
Wow.
And he puts in the request. The Beatles' Baby You're a Rich Man starts up, which is perfect. How does it feel to be one of the beautiful people, which is what he is now, even though he's never comfortable in his own skin.
Yeah.
But he's, as one of the end notes tells us, he's become the world's youngest billionaire in history. And what he does as the song plays, and this is again, the great metaphor for the world we live in, he keeps hitting refresh because he's waiting for her to respond to his friend request. I always have trouble saying those two words together. It's like toy boat. And he's waiting for, and that's me sometimes. I'll post something on Facebook.
Sure.
I'm checking it to see if anybody responds. It's pathetic.
The response, yeah.
Yeah, I don't do it with friend requests because I rarely make them.
Yeah.
But I do it with posts for sure. Or even on ILX, I'll post something that I'm happy with, and I'll going back, checking, refreshing. Has anybody responded yet?
Yeah.
And it's so sad. He's sitting there, and the song's playing, and you're listening to the lyrics reflect on him and his life and everything. Just a brilliant use of music.
Yeah.
I couldn't pick a better end song or a better way to end the film with him sitting there hitting refresh. He looks so forlorn.
Yeah.
It's like the perfect, Jesse Eisenberg, we talked about him, and I think we're going to talk about him more when we get to Adventureland. But it's his face is so perfect for this scene, And there is other music in Social Network. There's well-known
I don't remember the other music.
Boys to Men, I think, is used in it. They're the song that was #1 for so many weeks, but it's not. Yeah, it's not them singing. It's like a Harvard choral group or something. And that's the scene where the Winklevoss's twins, their friend, finds out that he's already launched Facebook. Right. Trent Reznor did some, pretty good soundtrack music. God, I'm not anything but a Nine Inch Nails fan, but he's gone on to have a pretty interesting career. like a Mark Mothersbaugh.
Yeah, yeah.
How do you say the name of
Jewish
that?
soundtrack, Mother's Bow or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, or there's another guy that does that who used to be on IRS who's become really well
Yeah, I
known.
know who you, Danny
No,
Elfman. Danny
yeah,
Elfman.
Danielle.
Yeah,
Was he an Oingo Boingo
I think
maybe?
so. Yeah.
So these guys, they've done really well for themselves. But there's not much pop music in the Social Network.
Yeah. The only one I
There's a
remember
great
is Beatles.
there's one great scene actually. It's not using anything, just using like a great club period song where he meets or he and not for the first time he and who's the Napster guy again?
Oh, I forget his name. Yeah.
Okay, so Justin
Not
Timberlake.
something or I don't know.
Yeah, Justin Timberlake plays him, does a great job, I think, and they go off to a nightclub, and that's a great scene, and that's a memorable use of music too, but it's not anything famous.
Right.
So Baby You're a Rich Man, great use of it. And again, we'll go back to the other question. Will the Beatles now? Will Paul McCartney start to license Beatles music more often? Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
One song I wrote about on the blog, one film I wrote about on the blog that used Norwegian Wood. It was a film when we first started it. I wrote about a Japanese film called Norwegian Wood.
Oh,
Was a good film, unusual, and ended with you had somebody else doing Norwegian Wood, somebody Japanese doing Norwegian Wood in the film, maybe even singing in Japanese. I can't remember, but it ended with the Beatles Norwegian Wood.
Beatles version. Wow.
Yeah. Now my thought at the time was that it was such a small film that maybe they felt that I like this film and we're just going to let them have it,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
minimum cost, whatever
Mhm.
scale cost. Other than that, though, I don't remember a lot of great Beatles music in the
No,
film.
neither do I. No.
Let's go to Malcolm X, okay, which is again one of my very favorite films. I have always thought that the acclaim that Do the Right Thing gets, and I understand it, and Do the Right Thing is a very provocative film, and there's a lot of great things about it. I much prefer Malcolm X. I think Malcolm X is a much more finished film. Now, and there are other, earlier tonight I was saying I like Cold Water for exactly the opposite reason. I like the rougher feel to it. So
Right.
that can hit you either way. But I think Malcolm X, for such a huge topic, is such a good film. And, I don't know that it's a perfect film. It's a long film, so I'm sure there's the odd moment in it that uh, doesn't hit me exactly the right way, but I think it's just an epic film.
Yeah, I
Uh,
agree.
and Denzel Washington in it is just truly amazing. Should have won every single acting award. I don't even think he was nominated for Best Actor that year.
Wow, that's
It's just
crazy.
one of the most ridiculous oversights ever. Delroy Lindo, who plays Jamaican Archie, should have won Best Supporting Actor.
Mm.
And that was the year of God, Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, I think. Film I don't
Wow.
like. It was either the year of Unforgiven or the year of Schindler's List, neither one
Right.
of which are films I like. So the song I chose, and I don't think it's the second appearance of Sam Cooke in the book, although I later went back and wrote those six or incorporated, I re-uploaded the book and incorporated six late entries in the blog. So I
Mm.
incorporated the entry I did on Atlanta, where I
Right.
did pick the book song, uh, Chain Gang.
Yeah.
But I think in the first version of the book, it's the only Sam Cooke, and Spike Lee uses "A Change Is Going to Come," which Marcus has certainly written lots about, written
Yeah.
really well. And honestly, up until Malcolm X, I don't think it was a song that ever really affected me deeply. I probably didn't even know it until Marcus wrote about it. I had down to 10 minutes. So I can cover these last two. Um, I all the Sam Cooke I knew, many songs I love were on the old original Yellow. Do you have that
Exactly.
best?
That's the Sam Cooke I got to know when I
Yeah,
discovered his
which
music.
is an
Yeah.
amazing record, right?
Yeah.
And I always gravitated to lesser known hits like Sad Mood and Having a Party. But then I also love Chain Gang and Twisted
Yeah.
in an Way. And A Change Is Going to Come is not on that record.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I didn't know until years later. It is Sam Cooke's very pointed song about civil rights movement. And Spike Lee uses it for the lead in to the assassination scene at the Audubon Ballroom. And now the clip I sent you, I noticed I went actually to the DVD because I remembered, well, there's actual voices, and it is the scene from the movie. Everything's the same, but I think they just eliminate the voices
Oh, I
using.
thought maybe it was a it seemed like a montage to me of
It's
things
not.
from the movie. It's not.
Yeah, it's not. It's exactly the scene. Everything.
Okay.
All they do is they mute the voices, so
Okay.
you hear talking. The music still plays, but you're talking. So it's got Malcolm X on his way to the Audubon Ballroom, and the whole gist of it is that he knows, much like Martin Luther King when he gives that great speech in Memphis to the striking
Yeah.
sanitation workers, like he knows his time is short, right? And it's even as he's in his car, and he casts a quick glance, almost sideways glance at the car that rolls up beside him. And we see, and one of the things that really made the scene extra moving to me tonight was one of the assassins is played by Giancarlo Esposito, who's in a lot of Spike Lee films, and he ends up being Gus Fring on. He really becomes a much bigger acting almost celebrity in the wake of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, playing this amazing character Gus Fring, who I don't think you've seen either one of those shows, or only a little bit of the
Mm.
stuff. But Gus Fring ends up being one of the two or three key characters in the film. Now he became less interesting as Better Call Saul went along, but the first two or three seasons of Breaking Bad that he's in, he's just an incredible character, one of the greatest
Wow.
TV characters ever. So watching Giancarlo Esposito tonight as one of the people who will shoot Malcolm X, that really caught my eye. The whole, as the song plays, you get the great Spike Lee image of somebody stationary, and some people don't
Right.
like this. I always loved it. Stationary in the frame, as I don't know what he does. It's like he mounts a camera on them. That's become one of his
Mm.
signatures. So you get Denzel seeming, it's like the character's floating. Him going through the streets. An old woman stops, I shouldn't say old woman, an older woman, older than I am. I'm an old man. She's older than I am, probably in her 70s, and she stops and speaks to Malcolm X about kind of you're doing great work, keep it up, and Jesus will spare you, and that's where the song ends.
Okay.
And then he goes to the Audubon Ballroom and gets shot, and that scene's great too. Uh, really, there's something so beautiful about the way the scene's filmed, and the majesty of the song and the sadness of the song just fit it perfectly, you know. And there's other great music in Malcolm X. I think Junior Walker's Shotgun is used. There's the great swing stuff early on, like Cab
Right.
Calloway. They're at it's the 40s, and they're at, I don't think it would be the Audubon Ballroom, but they're dancing at, up in Harlem. And there's great music from that time frame and other stuff throughout. So it just is the perfect cap to the film.
So I have to
Pick it up.
mention quickly,
Yeah,
you might have noticed me typing because I had to look it up.
well,
I
that's fine.
should mention that change is going to come. I remember this when you started talking about it because I have seen the movie. I don't think you have. It also shows up in the movie One Night in Miami, the movie
Oh,
that
which
is
I still
about
haven't
Sam
seen. Yeah,
Cooke and Malcolm X and who
yeah.
else was it?
Muhammad Ali is in
Muhammad
it.
Ali
Yeah,
and was it Muhammad Ali?
I
I
think
can't
so.
remember, but there's the four like sort of big cultural
Yeah,
figures of the time. It's interesting though. I'll just say it's the
yeah.
final. I think it's the final scene in the movie, but it's quite different than the Malcolm X in one sense because in some ways the whole theme of the movie in many ways leads up to the song. So I'll just say that. But
Oh,
it's
okay.
worth seeing. Like, and I actually
No,
would like to see it again. So
I've been meaning to see that, and I think it's still on either Netflix or Prime. So
yeah,
yeah, and I think Muhammad Ali is probably still Cassius Clay at the time. I'm not sure.
I think so. Yeah, Cassius. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's like around what year did Sam Cooke die? He died in '64 or something.
64, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be before then. So
So McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which I know we both love Leonard Cohen's music and that,
yeah.
and I think Marcus loves the film, but doesn't like the Leonard Cohen
Yeah,
music.
I thought I read that column that he wrote years ago, and I thought he was saying that that was one instance that he liked Leonard Cohen. But when
No,
it was posted recently on his Substack, it was clear that no, he didn't even like it in McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which
I know.
I'm completely out of step with him on that one for sure. I mean,
Like, I'm sure
it
for
like
most,
almost makes the movie. I mean, the movie is
I
great
know.
in
I was thinking
several ways.
it's like saying I love Reservoir Dogs. I just don't like all that junky top 40 music in
Yeah.
it.
Well, that one I could almost even see, but it'd
I
be
guess
almost
so.
like saying Main Street, but I just don't like that doo-wop music.
Yeah. It's
It's
just to
so
me, it
weird. Like,
is so integral to the film. I can say I think I could safely say the opposite, which is I don't know how much I'd like McCabe and Mrs. Miller if you took that away.
yeah,
You don't. You'd have a film this kind of murky Western with a lot of people mumbling. Um, it just would not, I know for a fact, it wouldn't be the same film for me.
yeah, no, it's brilliant.
There are 3 or 4 Leonard Cohen songs in it. I think all of them from his first album. No, all from his first 2 albums.
Oh, I
Maybe all,
thought they
no,
were just from. I think they're all from the
all from his
first. I
first
think.
album.
Yeah,
There's Winter Lady, the one that I
Stranger
chose,
Song is the
Stranger
opening.
Song, and there's a third one in there too.
Sisters of Mercy is in
Sisters
there.
of Mercy, of course. Yep.
Yeah,
Not Bird on a Wire, not So Long, Marianne.
yeah.
Uh, Now, Winter Lady is it is so memorable, and it is boy, I'm gonna have to really talk quickly here, Scott. It is just one of the great finishing scenes of any film ever. It's a long, extended, slow zoom into the iris or the pupil of Julie Christie's eye as she sits there, I think, stoned on opium. She's in an opium den. Intercut with the shot. McCabe has just been, the guys that have been out to kill McCabe, hunt him down. He gets murdered, and he's already dead, but
I was
he's
going to ask that though. It looks
pretty
like
sure he's dead. Maybe
he's
I'm
still
wrong.
kind of shaking in the clip, but he's
You could
clearly
be
in the
right.
snow, and he's going
So
to freeze to death if he doesn't die of losing
that
blood.
would be more poetic if he's not dead and he actually freezes to death because you get the snow piling up on his face.
Yeah.
And it's just such a beautiful ending, you know. I would show that to my class every year. Partly sometimes I think it was actually part of, when I was trying to teach them about film and the different types of shots. I was saying this is the greatest zoom shot ever
Yeah.
because I think it's an actual zoom. It's not a track. Zoom shots are often very clunky in films, especially these quick zooms.
Yeah.
And this one is as slow as could be and is so poetic and it matches the music so perfectly.
Yeah.
And it ends with that. I think for years I was confused as to what it ends on.
Hmm.
It ends on, I think she's holding up like a dreidel in front of her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to think it ends inside her eye, but I don't think it does. It's her
No,
seeing.
it shows the thing like kind of spinning around
Yeah.
or something, or the
Yep.
credits
And then
fading over the
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
and the credits start to roll, and I think the song continues on through the credits.
Yeah, I think so.
Um, so it is one of the defining films of its moment, I think, and not really like any other Altman film. Altman had different sides. He had his great kind of wise guy side, The Long Goodbye, MASH side. He had in California Split fits in that. He's got a really arty side I don't like. That Cold Day in the Park and Images. And this one film, Three Women, that has become one of his most revered films that I didn't like the 1 or 2 times I watched it. But McCabe and Mrs. Miller is the one, and actually it fits with Thieves Like Us, his poetics. Anyway, that's it, Scott. Got through them all. Next time we meet,
Excellent.
we're going to head into the heavyweight section. Okay, we got
Okay,
about
good.
go.
Looking forward to it.
Great. Thanks a lot, Scott.